بسم الله. جزاك الله خيرا. You guys ready? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه وبركاته عليه. أما بعد، فإن خير الكلام كلام الله، وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، شر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. As we continue this tremendous treatise entitled Fatwaa Al-Hamawiyyah al-Kubra, the great Imam Abu al-Abbas Taqi-ud-Din Ahmed ibn Abd al-Halim ibn Abd al-Salam ibn Taymiyyah al-Harrani al-Dimashqi, who died 728 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. The time now is 7:47 p.m. Wednesday, the 26th of Muharram. It's now the 16th of July, Wednesday, 7:47 p.m. Which on the Islamic date was currently what, everyone? The 26th of Muharram. 21st of Muharram. The 21st of Muharram, the year 1447, after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. We were discussing the matters pertaining to where we last stopped. As we finished the statement of Ibn Khafif, and we're almost actually finished what he was mentioning, rahimahullah, what Shaykh al-Islam conveyed upon him. And like you mentioned, the reason of why Shaykh al-Islam mentioned him kind of in a detailed way, due to the fact that the people of Tasawwuf were people that honored and revered them, meaning Abu Abdullah ibn Khafif. That was from their prominent scholars who they revered. So you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, especially in the earlier part of Tasawwuf, you'll find in the earlier days, before it evolved into something extremely grotesque, what we see today, where they start grave worshiping and believing that their so-called awliya, their so-called allies or confidants could conduct in this existence, and all the other satanic affairs they adopted today or currently. In the earlier times, before it evolved into what it evolved into, in the earlier times, you'll find that they were people who are upon the Sunnah. From them was the great scholar Abu Iyad, Qadi Iyad, rahimahullah, because he was from those in the earlier parts of the earlier days, who were scholars who still cling to the Sunnah. And for example, we talked about Bishop Hafi, but you'll find that the meaning of tasawwuf in the earlier days was not the definition of today. The meaning of tasawwuf in those days, the meaning of it was zuhud. Zuhud. It was something of asceticism, meaning abstination from opulent lifestyles or what have you. So in the earlier days, the meaning of tasawwuf was zuhud, until they made it into something else, where they took the same word where the people were sincerely just living a simple way or simple life. You'll find that they utilized it to capitalize upon trying to attain followers. So you find that people who had some sense of piety and reverence towards Allah and worship of Allah, people who tried to abstain from worldly affairs or an opulent lifestyle, they used to look at that like that was something honorable. It was something honorable, which if it is the person's situation, it is. If a person just wants to live a simple life, and like we said, zuhud, in actuality, is just living a simple life. It doesn't mean somebody to the point where they have to live in a hut where there's some dirt on the ceiling and their clothes or look like they haven't washed themselves within 1 to 2 weeks. And for example, they have hole in their clothes. That's something the people tasawwuf came and they warped it into something like that in order to so-called earn praise of the people. But that wasn't in actuality the affair in the earlier days of the earliest stages of tasawwuf. And like we said, in the earlier stages, like we mentioned, the meaning of it was just mere what, everyone? Zuhud. Zuhud. And like we said, zuhud just means a type of asceticism, ascetic or asceticism, where a person just lives a simple life. Just live a simple life. It's not opulent, but it's just generic, simple, normal, to the end of it. But like we talked about, the people of deviation, they made it into something else. And like we said, which was in it at the same time a form of showing off. So they tried to play the role of doing bad in order to earn the honor of the people. You'll find, as we'll talk about in a minute, this is part of the context of what I mentioned in the lesson today. As we'll read further, that Ibn Khafif, rahimahullah, talked about people who beg in the different categories of what we'll speak about in that type of light. We'll talk about that in a minute. Because you'll find that Ibn Khafif, rahimahullah, talked about how the people of Tasawwuf, what they had done in order to think that from zuhud is also to beg. And to the point where some of the Mashaykh al-Turuq, they took it as an actual form of employment, a diplomatic employment in order, or style or work or what have you, in order to so-called earn what they need. So basically, begging became some form of a job. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam is mentioning all these affairs and put in perspective exactly what the people of Tasawwuf do today. And in a lot of Muslim countries. How many Muslim countries some of us have been to, we've seen that people, they take a form of begging as a form of a job, deceiving the people. And you'll find certain so-called Mashayikh al-Turuq also coming to a so-called city or land, and you'll find that they take so-called as a karama, their so-called sheikh being in their land, in their region, sitting within the lands of the people, and then they'll send out their so-called employees for that sheikh al-tariqah, and they'll go beg for him, gather the money for him, and he'll live off begging the people. And he'll get married, and they say, well, why are you doing this for him? Because he's sheikh al-tariqah. He's the sheikh of the tariqah, and he's in him being amongst us, our land, is a form of karama. It's a karama for us. So you'll find that these type of affairs, Ibn Khafif, rahimahullah, spoke about earlier in his time, even though, like we said, he was upon tasawwuf, and he was upon some form of ahl kalam also. But the point of the matter is you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah was putting this and mentioning this in order to put in perspective the great deviations of what they were upon and in these days and times, and how all these affairs that even their so-called scholars condemned their own followers for doing this type of nonsense. So Shaykh al-Islam is saying, this is your own scholar speaking against you. This is your own so-called revered scholar condemning this nonsense that you involve yourself in and that you partake in. So why does this matter that you're practicing? Why are you doing it? And you clearly see that he was trying to follow what was correct, even though he had certain affairs that were form of misguidance and deviations in certain aspects. But you'll find that what he's saying agrees with what the people of the Sunnah are saying, and you hold him in high esteem. So why don't you follow him in this, as you so-called claim? So that's the type of affairs you'll find in Shaykh al-Islam of why he was mentioning in Hamawiyyah here. And I'm going to read it quickly. Listen to what he said, and this is where we last stopped. He said, after he spoke about the affairs of Nasheed, remember we were speaking about that? We said that Nasheed, how even the earliest scholars condemned Nasheed, and that was about approximately 700, 800 years ago. And they even were condemning the affairs of Nasheed. And all you have to do is go to your phones now, in which you'll find the great Imam, Shaykh Salih Fawzan, Hafidhullah. How he said how you'll find that eventually a Nasheed will be utilized in order to now call the people to an unlegislated jihad. Until they will find that they utilize these type of tactics in order to incite the people upon khuruj, upon overthrowing the Muslim governments and leaders and destabilizing the Muslim lands. All you have to do, if one wanted to go to social media, put in the Arabic language Nasheed, watch what comes up. It'll be poetry. It sounds like musical poetry, talking about jihad and fighting and killing and suicide, bombing, and this is a form of bravery to the end of it. So you'll find that Nasheed 700 or 800 years ago, they talked about the Salaf condemned this. Even the Sufis in the earliest stages even condemned the forms of Nasheed. You did it. Don't waste no time. What did it say?
It says, Shaykh, says, the people in this time, as it relates to jihad, are at two extremes of the spectrum.
Exactly. That's all I need to know. So you'll find that those type of affairs and what we talked about in the Nasheed is exactly what the ulama said, what it will involve, what it will evolve into, which is affairs that are utilized in order to now lead the Muslims further astray, and utilize it for affairs that are evil, satanic, and affairs that will be a reason for them going further away from Allah and subjecting them to humiliation. So let's keep reading quickly. Where it says Abu Abdullah, he's talking about Ibn Khafif. His name was Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Khafif. Shaykh al-Islam says, we just read this quickly, I'll read it again. He said, وَمِمَّا نَقُولُ هُوَ قَوْلُ أَئِمَّتِنَا إِنَّ الْفَقِيرَ إِذَا احْتَاجَ See? وَصَبَرَ وَلَمْ يَتَكَفَّفْ إِلَى وَقْتٍ يَفْتَحُ اللَّهُ لَهُ كَانَ أَعْلَى فمن عجز عن الصبر كان السؤال أولى به على قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم لأن يأخذ أحدكم حبله إلى الحديث إلى آخر الحديث. ونقول إن ترك المكاسب غير جائز إلا بشرائط مرسومة من التعفف والاستغناء عما في أيدي الناس. ومن جعل السؤال حرفة وهو صحيح, he's going to explain this, فهو مذموم في الحقيقة خارج. ونقول إن المستمع إلى الغناء والملاهي فإن ذلك كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم الغناء ينبت النفاق في القلب وإن لم يكفر فهو فسق لا محالة. So he continues to say, Abu Abdullah, and keep in mind, Ibn Khafif still honored the people of the Sunnah. From them is Imam Ahmad, Ibn Hanbal, Muhammad bin Idris al-Shafi'i, Imam al-Bukhari, and other than them from the great Imam of our religion. Listen to what he says. So we say the statement of our scholars. So he was talking about the people of the Sunnah. So then he's speaking about affairs of poverty. So keep in mind the people tasawwuf, they always like to capitalize upon these affairs of begging, poverty, zuhud, asceticism, all those matters. They utilize it in order to captivate and capture more followers. Right? So it says, in al-faqir, verily the poor person, and we're going to explain this, if he needs, if he's in need, and he's patient, وَلَمْ يَتَكَفَّفْ, and he doesn't extend his hand in begging to a certain time frame or to a certain time, Allah will relieve him until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relieves him. I'm sorry, everyone. Until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relieves him, he said that is a'la, that's higher, or that's better. Don't worry, I'm going to explain this. فَمَنْ عَجَزْ, and who is not able to abstain, where they don't have that patience, they don't have the patience, he said then begging is more befitting for him over the statement of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of where he said that it's better for one of you to take a rope. And we know the hadith spoke about cutting down the trees, having or gathering some type of wood, going to the market and selling it to the people is better than a person begging. We're going to explain that. Then he goes on to say, all these different statements that he mentioned, we'll explain it in one moment. وَنَقُولُ, verily leaving off or abandoning makasib. Makasib means acquisition, or acquiring things you need. The word makasib. The plural is makasib. Makasib just means acquisitions or all forms of acquiring money or earnings that you need. Abandoning this affair, he said, is not permissible. He said, except by shara'it marsuma, except by stipulated conditions of ta'affuf, of a person abandoning this affair, meaning they abstain from involving themselves. And all this we'll explain in a minute. And also being independent and solely free of what is in the hands of the people. And whoever makes begging a profession, it is correct. He said he's saying making it correct, then it is dispraised in reality outside. And we say, and then he now has to go off to a different topic here. He goes what they call istitrad in the Arabic language. Goes off topic. Verily the person that listens to music, singing the music, indeed the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that music, that it plants hypocrisy in the heart. And then he goes on to say, after he just mentioned the hadith, he quotes a slight statement from it. Then he goes back to his statement. He says, even though he doesn't disbelieve, but it is fisq. It is sin. It is sin. It's fisq. No doubt about that. La mahala. Right, so let's keep going. So let's go back to the first part of the statement. He said, what we say is the qawlu a'immatina. It is the statement of our scholars. Keep in mind, as we talked about, or we mentioned last class, if you go back to the statement of who he's referring to, he's talking about the scholars of the Sunnah. Because if you go back in the book, it's speaking about Imam Shafi'i, the great Imam Malik, the great Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, Yazid ibn Harun, the great Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and also Ishaq ibn Rahawayh, great ulama of the Sunnah. So he's referring to them. So keep in mind, even though Ibn Khafif was upon certain matters that were in opposition, but he still referred to those scholars of the Sunnah as an example to be followed. So he referred back to them, right, everyone? Even though he was upon who he's upon, rahimahullah. So let's keep going. Then he goes on to say about a person being impoverished or being poor. So now this is the statement he wanted to explain. He said, إن الفقير إذا احتاج وصبر ولم يتكفف إلى وقت يفتح الله له كان أعلى. يفتح إلى وقت يفتح الله له كان أعلى. Excuse me. Indeed, the person who's impoverished, if he is in need and he's patient and he doesn't beg to a certain time, Allah will relieve him. Until the point where Allah will relieve him, that will be higher. Right. with the fuqaha, you'll find that the great imam, when he explained this statement of Ibn Khafif here, what does this mean? A person might say, or ask the question, or pose the question, which one is more virtuous? A person that's impoverished, that's patient, or a person that is ghani, they're rich, or they have some form of wealth, and they're thankful to Allah. What does that mean? Mean you'll find that those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might have provided or given some type of form of wealth, they spend it in His cause. They spend it in His cause, not in fear of Him, fear of becoming poor, or they have no fear of affairs in which someone normal might be in fear in if they were financially stable, what have you. That's a person that's what they call ghani shakir. Ghani shakir. So a person might ask the question, which person is better? The one who's impoverished but they're patient and they abstain from begging, or the person that's rich or well off or wealthy, and they are thankful to Allah. And like we said, that means they spend it in His cause. In all forms of khair, of good, in which they don't fear losing their money, or they do not fear becoming in a state of poverty or what have you. Which one is better? So that's the question. You'll find the great Imam, even Muhammad Amani, said this in regards to explaining the statement. He said, which one do we say? However, this type of usage, you'll find that Ibn Khafif, that he says, some of the muhaqqiqeen, of those who are truly upon scholarly caliber in affairs of jurisprudence, they did not exactly, were not saying that this was acceptable. Meaning, you'll find that the affairs pertaining to those who are impoverished and the affairs of those who are wealthy but they're thankful, he said one could be better than the other. You'll find that there are people who are al-aghniyat shakirin, for those who have been enriched, who are in those type of conditions, who are thankful to Allah, in certain instances could be better than the people who are fuqara sabirun. They are better than impoverished ones who are patient. So the affair needs some form of what? Needs some form of explanation in detail to put everything in its proper meaning. For the affair, for example, al-masala raji'atun ila ma yakun biqulub al-ashkhas. So now we could just circle and put around this statement. Just to put everything and understand it properly, one could say this, everyone, can make this statement. That the matter, it returns back to what's in the heart of the individual. Biqulub al-ashkhas. It goes back to the heart, or the condition of the heart of the individuals. He said the people are at different levels as far as what, everyone? In regards to their sincerity and their reliance upon Allah. Right, everyone? As we know of those who had wealth from this ummah, who's who? Just to give one example quickly. Abu Bakr. And he's the best of this ummah. And Abu Bakr, everyone knows he has some form of what? Wealth. To the point where when the Messenger of Allah asks, Alhamdulillah. We know that Abu Bakr he had some form of wealth. And when the time came when he, radiallahu anhu, was asked to sacrifice for Allah and His Messenger, we know that the times where Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu gave a half. And that in itself was tremendous. That was astonishing. And then Abu Bakr followed up behind him and said he gave all of it. Gave all of it. All of it is for Allah and His Messenger. Not fearing any form of what? Poverty. That type of affair is a clear example to clarify what we're speaking about. So the initial matter revolves around the state of the heart of who? Of the individual. So people are at different levels in regards to their sincerity and their reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And their truthfulness with Allah. So the great Imam Shaykh Muhammad Aman, he even mentions this. He said, قد يكون الفقير صابرا في ظاهر حاله ولكن لا يعلم حقيقة ما في نفسه إلا الله وقد يكون الغني منفقا باذلا يقول هكذا هكذا لكن من الذي يعلم ما في نفسه من الإخلاص إلا الله لذلك الحكم عليهم أن الفقراء الصابرين خير أو خير أو الأغنياء الشاكرين خير فيه مجازفة. He said, for a person now, the matter that a person who's impoverished, indeed, he could probably see, or he might perhaps be patient of what we see openly, في ظاهر حاله, openly in his condition. However, nobody knows the reality of what is in himself except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you'll find that the person that's well off or wealthy, spending it in his cause, will say such and such and such and such. However, no one will know truly within himself of sincerity except who? Except Allah. So for that reason, to give the ruling upon generally in these circumstances, to say, for example, the impoverished, patient ones are better, or the wealthy, thankful ones are better, that to just say it generally has a form of mujazafa, meaning it has some form of matters pertaining to what goes beyond the bounds to a certain extent. He said, for that affair, if we want to say what's correct, the affair is left for the one reality that knows that matter is left for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who knows truly reality. So these individuals, certain circumstances can be better, and the opposite. Like we said, the affair is based upon how we just mentioned it. For that matter, like we said, or for that reason, we say this mas'ala, we summarize it by saying Abu Abdullah ikhtisara قد يكون مخلا. Even though he said in the statement, if you go back to the book, he said, if the faqir, or the one who's impoverished, is in need, and he's patient, he said, وَلَمْ يَتَكَفَّ فِي وَقْتٍ يَفْتَحُ اللَّهُ لَهُ كَانَ أَعْلَى. If a person is impoverished, is in need, and he's patient, and he doesn't extend his hand in begging to a certain extent, or to a certain time, until Allah relieves him, that is higher. Higher than who, everyone? Based upon our statement we said, or based upon what we just explained a moment ago, it depends. Right? It depends. Is it higher than the person, أعلى من الفقير الذي لم يصبر? Is it higher than the one who's impoverished and he wasn't patient? Or higher than the wealthy one who's thankful and he spends in his cause? Like we said, the affair is probable. But the affair is what? Ihtimal. Like we said, all of it depends on the person's circumstance, and it also depends on the person's sincerity, the ikhlas, and the level of iman and their reliance upon Allah. So we just say that, just to summarize it, it all relies or goes back to certain circumstances and certain levels of one's iman. So it's not just clear cut like that. Everything I'm saying so far, is it clear? It's not just clear cut. Now I'm going to give certain circumstances, I might say. Person would say, well, give me some examples for more clarity, which I'm going to mention right now. So your father Ibn Khafifi says, who's not able to be patient, then begging or asking is more befitting for him. He said that statement, what he just said here, or this type of blanket statement, has some nazar in it, has something that needs to be clarified. That needs to be clarified, and that needs to be put in proper understanding and perspective. For example, asking, is it being permissible for him in certain circumstances? He said, al-faqir, the person might have been rich, let's just say, and something might have happened. Some type of circumstance that might have came, and it devoured his wealth. Here in this instance, what is he supposed to do? He'll be resort to asking. Like we said, the word su'al just means asking. And in certain meanings, it can mean begging. It can be both, depending on the context. Su'al means asking, and in certain contexts, it can mean begging. Here in this instance, if one now has some form of wealth, and his wealth became destroyed, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, or something happened to it, some form of ja'iha, some form of affliction or test might have happened to him or her or what have you. In that instance, a person can ask. And I think we had these circumstances happen in the city before. It's known. So in those particular predicaments, one can what? They can ask. Person that's in those very difficult times. So then he goes on to say, that is the affair we wanted to give a detail. Person might have been in his house, and we know these things have happened even in our own communities, where somebody's house might have burnt down. They lost all their belongings. Or they might have, their wealth might have drowned. It might have had some type of form of storm, a hurricane, or what have you. In those instances, a person can what? They can ask. They can ask. So in that instance, the shutter allows for a person to ask. So here, huna yuqal jaiz. He said for that instance, we don't say it's awla. Awla means befitting. In these instances, we could say it's what? It's jaiz. It's permissible. Is it clear, everyone? It's jaiz. It's not awla. Awla means befitting. Jaiz is more adaq. It's more accurate to say jaiz. They can ask now where it's permissible than the word befitting. So that's the matter that we were mentioning here. Where, like we said, just to keep everything in proper understanding, it depends on the what? It depends on all these circumstances. Person who's poor might be in some real hard circumstances. Something might have happened. All these affairs, like we said, it depends. So it's not just cut and dry like that. However, what we'll talk about in a minute is speaking about the people tasawwuf who take it as a profession. So the matter revolves around the context, which is pertaining to what they do, not the issues in regards to what we're discussing here, generally in regards to the proper understanding where certain people, like we said, are impoverished. Something might have happened. Something might have happened to their health, their wealth. They couldn't go out and earn. They might not have someone that can help them, someone that can be by their side to aid them. So all of those circumstances are considered. All of them are considered. So it's not just clear cut as we just mentioned. However, what we're speaking about is two affairs. So we're going to talk about this in a minute. To know that you're able-bodied and you purposefully and intentionally go out and beg and ask, knowing that you have the ability to go out and earn. That's number one of who we're speaking about. To go out and how the shutter, and which we'll talk about in a minute, encourages the person to go make money with their own hand by going out and earning it as much as they're able to put forth their best ability in doing that and their best foot forward into doing that. And not thinking in your mind that the world owes you something. Because we do have a problem with that these days. People in their mind thinking people around them owe them something. You owe me something. Based upon what? Do I know you? Entitlement issues. And it's widespread amongst men and females these days. They're very entitled. The master owed me something. The world owed me something. My mom owed me something. My father owed me something. To the end of it. To the point where, your mother and father owes you something when you're young and you can't fend for yourself. But when you reach a certain age of adulthood, you're able-bodied and you're able to go out, here they don't owe you anything. You understand? It's time for you to be a man. Grow up and go out and earn your own to the best of your ability. Now, when you fall on hard times, we'll be there for you because everybody falls on hard times in their life. There's not a person except that they go through stages where hard times happen. We're not talking about those circumstances. We're talking about this is your daily affair of what you want to be doing and thinking the world around you owes you something. You understand? That's the matters we're speaking about in these particular contexts. And you'll find that Ibn Khafif is mentioning this here. He's saying that it's not permissible to do that. Rather, a person goes out in the most best way, in the most proficient way, to go out and earn his own spending, so his own provisions. Then you have the second type, number two, we'll talk about. He says the people of Tasawwuf, in which you'll find that a lot of them spread amongst the amongst the Muslims in certain Muslim lands, how this is from our religion, to go out and beg. It's from our religion, go out and do it, even if you're lying. Sit in the door, try to now persuade the people, showing your state, or it's so bad now you even find that in certain Muslim worlds, they'll even push forward people who have handicap or have some type of physical physical deformity in order to now take away from the money or the earnings and the spendings of the people in order to help them. And it's a form of deception. And from the greatest of affairs, you'll find is their so-called scholars doing it. The Mashaykh al-Turuq. They say that to come to your land is a form of honor for you, so you have to now go out and give money for him. So know that the Shaykh al-Tariqah, him being amongst our land, is an honor. It's a karama. It's a miracle. He's here. But people laugh and they think that this is something that's not present. It's present. The Shaykh al-Tariqah has come to our land. We should feel honored and revered that he's just here with us. So you'll find that he employs or designates people to go out and give money for him. And he's sitting there enjoying life, not moving, not doing anything, getting married, and living off the so-called money of the people in the form of begging. So this is what you'll find that Ibn al-Khafif, rahimahullah, was mentioning in this particular context before we actually mention it or mention the details. So let's keep reading. So based upon that, like we said, let's go back to the beginning of the statement. So just to keep it simple, we said that is people who are impoverished better than a person who's rich? What do we say? Number one, not necessarily. It depends on what. It depends on the state of the person, how they are, also the sincerity, their iman, and their tawakkul on Allah. So it's not just blanket like that. In addition to that, what did we say in the statement? We said that in the statement where it says it's more befitting, we said there's affairs that happen where emergencies might come up. So a person might have some form of accident, some of a fire might have happened, he lost all their belongings in the fire, hospital, sick, they can't go out and work because their physical won't let them. All these matters plays a part in what we're talking about here. And in those instances, a person can what? They can ask, especially if he doesn't have anyone to care for her or care for him. And what are they supposed to do? And like in actuality, a lot of people don't realize that going and encourage a person to be on public assistance is a form of begging. Yes, it is. Public assistance is a form of asking and begging. Rather, you're making a non-Muslim your father to take care of you. Those are the matters that we're mentioning, everyone. At the end of the day, those are all still form of what? Begging and asking. It is. People have to realize that. It's the same thing. So keep in mind, take that in consideration. But they said, people are forced in certain predicaments and circumstances based upon their what? Based upon what they have facing them of great trials. If a woman now embraces Islam, she has 4 children before Islam, she'll be forced in a predicament because we know some of our brothers don't want to take care of somebody else's kids. They don't. I don't want to do it. Hey, that's so-and-so's children. That ain't my job. That's not my duty. Okay. So what is a woman supposed to do? What's she going to do? You give me the solution. I'm listening. Now, brothers who have said this to me, and I'll sit there and I'll go like this. I'm waiting. Exactly. Thank you. So she's gonna put her kids out in the street just to marry you? You understand? So all those are circumstances in what we just mentioned in order to establish that it's all based upon the predicament. Is it clear, everyone? Good. So as long as we understand that, now we can move on. So based upon that, you'll find that the Prophet ﷺ, then you'll find Ibn Khafif that he mentions the hadith of what he said, even though he used it as an evidence, but generally it's correct because the message of Allah in this narration, basically it's a form of encouragement. Even though the message of Allah gave a job that I think certain people here would be like, ooh, I don't know if I could do that. I could go down to a forest and chop down wood and chop down big trees, cut it all up, saw it up, push it to the market and sell it. But now, the message of Allah was mentioned this in the hadith just to establish how, in an instance, how it's better for you to what? Go do your own earnings. That's all. That's what the Messenger of Allah is mentioning. He's saying that in an instance, in order to make a form of encouragement and incentive for the people to always go out to the best of their ability to make their own earnings and what spendings and provisions for themselves. Not necessarily going out and doing this. But if you have to and a person can, of course, by all means, go do it if you can. But the affair, a person might say, well, go out to the forest, and doing that requires a lot of work. But that's not what was meant and intended in the hadith. What is meant and intended in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is that it's a form of an incentive that a person puts forth their great ability and not what subjecting themselves to asking and begging. Is it clear? Good. So based upon that, we already gave the different, like we said, predicaments in this regard. So Ibn Khafifi goes on to say that these type of affairs are better for the mu'min than him trying to rely on what's in the hands of the people. And we know this in Hadith Arba'in Nawawiyyah. What did the Prophet ﷺ say that we know? The meaning, more or less, was had fima inda nas yuhibbuka nas. Have zuhud of what the people have, and the people will love you. Meaning that you don't always try to now yearn for what the next person have, so you can now get some of it. Always relying on yourself. And if you do take on a friend, you take on them as a friend because you love them for Allah, and that's it. Not because of what they have worldly, and you want to be greedy, so you now want to get in with them in order to what? Get some of it. Have those zuhud with the people, not being around them to try to now get to know them. And you'll find that the people eventually they'll start to what? Love you. You're nice to be around because I know you don't want nothing from me. You understand, everyone? But if the person asks, or they offer rather, it's something different. They offer. So those type of affairs are what the shara', but it encourages. Don't forget for 2 rakats. You'll find that it's not befitting for the believer to now humiliate themselves. They don't now try to look forward to what the people possess or what's in their hands. So based upon that, now another affair that we wanted to give of detail in this context, I wanted to read quickly. لكن لو جاءه مال من بعض من يعرف حاله دون طلب منه ودون سؤال عرض عليه مالا وهو محتاج له أن يأخذ من هذا المال الذي جاءه بدون طلب وبدون إشراف نفس. إذا جاءه مال كهذا له أن يأخذ قدر حاجته لا للاستكثار. الأخذ للاستكثار يجلب الفقر. This is a very important detail. لأن الذي يسأل دائما فيظهر نفسه بمظهر الفقر هذا يصاب بالفقر دائما. ومن استغنى أغناه الله. على الفقير أن يستغني بكل ما يستطيع من الوسائل. لذلك استدلال أبي عبد الله على هذا وعلى ما ذهب إليه بهذا الحديث بينهما تنافع. To the end of it. So that is the origin. The mu'min does not make himself susceptible to be humiliated, or he humiliates himself by extending himself to now look forward of what the people have or what is in their hands. Now listen. However, if it came to him wealth, لو جاءه مال, if it came to him wealth by some of the people which is known their state of affairs, and someone came and offered it, and he didn't go seek it, nor did he ask. Someone came, offered it to him, and he's in need. And he might take from the wealth in which, like we said, and which was offered to him without him seeking it. And I want everyone to know this part because a lot of Muslims don't know this. This one I want everyone to listen to. Ishrafu nafs. What does that mean? So these are the type of predicaments that we were mentioning in regards to now certain people being in a circumstance of a need. So number one, we said person now being offered wealth by someone that comes to them and offers it to them. Or, for example, ishrafu nafs. This is another affair that a lot of people are not aware of. Ishrafu nafs, everyone, means that you're asking in an indirect way. What does that mean? You come up to a person, you know they got money. I haven't been, my rent hasn't been paid 6 months, I'm just living in some real bad times right now, You're not asking directly, what are you doing? You're insinuating and you're asking indirectly. You're trying to get them to incite them to do it and make them feel bad to the point they'll give it to you. That's called ishrafu nafs. It's not permissible. Can't do that. A lot of Muslims don't know that's not permissible. It's not. Ishrafu nafs. They could no. That doesn't necessitate they're lying. It could be true. They might be that I never paid my. I got all these bills. In a certain instance, it could be a scam if you're lying. But in a certain instance, that might be your predicament. It could be. Your rent hasn't been paid 2 months, 3 months, and you see so and so. I know you have money, and not. Yeah, I'm good. You just sneeze. I thought I was gonna see. You might not have had no money, or you might not have had paid your rent, or you're falling in some very, very hard times. Let's just say your rent is now backed up, even though you will find that how can it be backed up for that many months? What have you? That is kind of strange. But anyway, I have certain things that haven't been paid off. You come around a person, sit with them. Uh, you're now showing that basically you're in some very hard times. So instead of asking directly, you're trying to incite them to give it to you. That is called ishrafu nafs. And I've seen a lot of Muslims do this, and I don't know if they don't know it's not permissible, but here's to clarify, it's not permissible to do that. Can't do that. So it's trying to now basically, you thinking that me not being direct, so instead of just me not being direct, I'm going to do it indirectly to still get what I want. As if that's going to make it better. Or it's as if that's going to make it more productive so it won't humiliate yourself, I guess. Certain people think in their mind, instead of me just being direct, maybe I'll just do it this way so it won't seem like it can preserve my honor, I guess. But still wrong at the end of the day. Why? Because it's called ishrafu nafs. Ishraf nafs. So if it wasn't in those circumstances, so a person now comes and offers you money, you didn't seek it, you didn't ask, you didn't indirect try to incite them to give it to you, and they happen to give it to you, in this instance, you can what? Take it. You take the wealth, of course. Listen what the Ahl al-Ilm, especially the great Imam Muhammad al-Mahdi, says about this. He says, however, let him take according to his need. According to his need, qadra hajatah, not in order to become wealthy, la lil istikthar, and also not for him to constantly do it either. Because a person that now takes money to constantly do it, and is so-called enrich himself, now is pulling towards himself to be impoverished even more. Because we know that Allah, as it comes in the narration, if we have some more time, we'll get into it. The more that a person begs, he makes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now make his provisions more restricted. The opposite effect of what you're trying to remove, you're actually bringing to yourself. Either by constantly doing it, because now it becomes something habitual. And at the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making poverty right between your eyes. To the point, how many people have financial wealth, but it's not blessed in the sense where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts within themselves qana'ah, where they have enough and what is called self-sufficiency, or where they become content. That's the word I'm looking for. So the wealth that is not blessed, you never feel that that gratification or that satisfaction of being content. So you're always feeling like you're poor at the end of the day. You're always feeling like I'm poor. So the matter, as we said, keep in mind the context of what we're mentioning here, everyone, that the more that one now does this matter, the opposite effect happens to you. So when you beg and you constantly have your hand out, constantly ask the people for wealth, the opposite effect happens. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put in your heart, or He will not put in your heart that enrichment, nor that contentment, and the door of begging and feeling impoverished becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So the opposite effect happens. He said, because the person that constantly asks, and he now exposes himself, بِمَظْهَرِ الْفَقْرِ, and an appearance of poverty, he said he will always be afflicted with poverty all the time. وَمَنِ اسْتَغْنَى أَغْنَاهُ اللَّهُ, and whoever self-suffices or self-sufficiency in having that affair in order to attain it and utilize it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will enrich him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will enrich him. So, these are the circumstances that we mentioned. وَعَلَى الْفَقِيرِ أَن يَسْتَغْنِيَ بِكُلِّ مَا يَسْتَطِيعُ مِنَ الْوَسَائِلِ. For that reason, it's upon a person that's impoverished to now be self-sufficient in any shape, form, or fashion possible in a manner that's lawful. In a manner that's from the affairs of what is lawful and the means and methods that Allah has made, facilitated, and available. So to now, like we said, based upon what Ibn Khafif that he mentioned, that statement, if you look at it again, it needed a little bit more detail in it. So these are the details that we have to present, especially in the aspects of affairs of begging and asking. And it has all these different details, and it has all these different forms of what? Enlightenment that we have to know. So it's not just blanket like that. So let's move on this because I want to finish this point before the salah. So going back to what Ibn Khafif that he mentions, he says, نقول إن ترك المكاسب غير جائز إلا بشرائط مرسومة من التعفف والاستغناء عما في أيدي الناس. So abandoning acquisition, leaving it off, is not permissible. So what is these type of conditions he's mentioning here? So now we allow for people, if we used to say, and it's not from our religion at all, as we said, we're not telling the people to abandon acquisition. That is from the affairs of who, everyone? The Sufis, the people of Tasawwuf. You'll find that they, in certain instances, and certain of their people who give the exception to the rule, where it goes against the religion, the Kitab and Sunnah, where they now abandon it, going out and attaining their own earnings or their own provisions. So keep in mind, Ibn Khafif, where did he live? About maybe 800 years ago, saying to his own people, that's not permissible for you to abandon acquisition and your own personal earnings that you need in order to support yourself. And if you're now saying that's permissible, it's not. So that's what he's mentioned here in this particular context. He's saying, we do not allow for a person to abandon acquisition. وَيُعْرِضُوا عَنِ الْكَسْبِ الْحَلَالِ بِدَعْوَى أَنَّهُ يَتَعَفَّفْ, that he turns away from lawful earnings in the claim that he's trying to be ta'affuf, or he's trying to be so-called afif, that I'm just trying to be a person of humbleness and piety. That's incorrect. He's a man and a human being, and their state, naturally, he needs. So he has to now be forced in circumstances based upon a person's condition. On a daily basis, he goes out and he seeks his earnings. And like we talked about earlier, we said in certain hard times and difficult circumstances, if it happens, then he might have to go and ask. فَيَذْهَبْ تَعَفُّفُ. In that instance, his so-called humbleness and piety and all those matters, like we said, in that instance will go based upon what Ibn Khafif is saying. But that's not the case. The person still, in those circumstances that the hard times fell upon, where he might need a little bit of help in certain conditions or certain states that happen to him, he's still at the same time fearing his Lord. So to remove that description, that's not the case. But however, the thing that we want to establish that a person, they do their best in order to now attain their own earnings and do not take as a profession, extending their hand and constantly asking the people. But however, where he's going to now tie everything together is pertaining to the people tasawwuf. So let's go down and jump to this next statement. He said, وَمَنْ جَعَلَ السُّؤَالِ حِرْفَةً وَعِنْدَهُمْ وَهُوَ الصَّحِيحُ فَهُوَ مَذْمُومٌ فِي الْحَقِيقَةِ خَارِجٌ. Whoever makes now asking a profession, he said, and is correct with him, that is condemned. In reality, outside. Meaning, outside the mannerisms and the pure teachings of the religion. والوقوع في السؤال واتخاذ السؤال حرفة يقع من طائفتين. This is what we just mentioned. So now a person extending or asking in the so-called profession that people take in this regard or in this so-called state is two groups. Number one is those who are ignorant, that did not learn the pure teachings of the religion. And they think that it's from Islam, and in actuality, it's not. And they think that as long as I'm poor or I'm faqir, it's permissible for me to take this on as a profession. We already mentioned a moment ago that that's what everyone, impermissible. He said you'll find in instances people go to Hajj, لأن حرفته في بلده السؤال إذن حرفته معه فليأخذ حرفته التي هي السؤال فليأتي للحج. هذه فتوى غير سليمة غير مقبولة غير موافقة لتعاليم الإسلام، والإسلام يحارب السؤال، والمتعرض لهذه الإهانة يهين نفسه ويذل. ولكن قد يتخذ هذه الحرفة بعض الجهال ظنا منهم أن ذلك جائز لهم، بل منهم من بالغ واعتقد أن هذه حرفة آبائه، أن هذه حرفة آبائه وورثها من آبائه وأجداده. He said so much ignorance you'll find within the Muslim world because of them turning away from proper knowledge, not learning their religion, or they're taking it from its improper sources. And you'll find that they're evil scholars issuing for them religious verdicts and rulings, telling them that you can do that. You could deceive the people. You could go then and now take their wealth, even though it's not your case, but do it anyway. Rather, sir, in your instance, you could take it as a profession. So do it. And he said, go to Hajj, sit in a certain circles, and start begging. He said that this religious verdict is not correct, unacceptable, not in agreement with the pure teachings of the religion of Islam in which the Messenger of Allah came with. Rather, you'll find that Islam makes war with asking and begging, makes war with it as much as possible. And a person that does that, they make themselves susceptible to what? To now what they call ihana, humiliation, and humiliate himself, and being a form of condemnation amongst the people. So taking this, like we said, as a profession, some of the people who are ignorant thinking that it's from the religion and that it's permissible for them to do that, until the point where some of them even go to the extremes, until the point where they believe that this was the profession of my father and my grandfathers, to the point when I'm not able to leave it off because it was in my family lineage to do it. So you'll find that these matters are prevalent and present within certain lands. This is the last part. This is the last one because we already mentioned this. We'll stop. The second group is the people called Dajajila. Dajajila means Sufiya. The ignorant ones from the people Tasawwuf, where they don't even go to the markets. They'll just sit in their cozy place and relax, and they dispense or send out their followers to go get the wealth for them and bring it back to them. يجلس في حضرته بدعوى أنه غني عن الناس. He'll sit amongst the so-called people present amongst him and say, I'm not in need of the people. Right? Because he's the Shaykh al-Tariqa. ولكن له خلفاء له مريدين يجمعون له المال من الناس باسم الكرامة. However, he has the followers or successors that he dispatches because he has murid or murideen, his followers, that are subservient to him. They go collect the money from the people for him in the name of the karama, or that the Shaykh has came and honored us with his presence. And like we said, he lives off the people by this. You'll find that they even now go out to get animals, slaughter for him, anything valuable. تجمع هذه الأشياء ثم يتفاخر أنه من زهده لم تلمس يده قط شيئا من النقود. Gathering wealth for him, and then he sits and brags and said that this is from my form of asceticism. See, I'm not asking no one. So his hand directly didn't what? Touch the money or the fulus. Look to how you'll find that certain people of evil laugh against the Muslims, taking advantage of them with this type of behavior, thinking that they could be easily what? Manipulated, taking advantage of the impressionable so-called people and using them for his own so-called personal endeavors or his ulterior motives, playing with the minds of the people. And I've seen this type of affair even to this day, how certain people can manipulate people's minds and play with their minds. And to this day, certain tactics like these are still being utilized even here in Philadelphia. So those type of matters, everyone, is what we mentioned, is what you'll find. You'll find عندك الخدم. You'll find that he has so-called servants. They go out, they do the work for him. وأنت ما عليك. No, Sheikh, it's not upon you except to just eat, drink, get married, enjoy life. And that's your job. And he becomes from the most richest of the people in his own city. ومع ذلك صحيح يده لم تلمس النقود. And that he is now so-called able-bodied, well-health, but his hand directly didn't touch the money and go get it for himself. And in this instance, even though it wasn't direct, it's still a form of begging, no matter. But it's a trick, so-called trick, diplomatic way in which you'll find that they utilize in order to take advantage of the people. Right. So that's the reason why you'll find that Ibn Khafif mentioned this matter. Is it clear, everyone? Right. Also, you'll find at the last part, and this will stop, he says, then he went off topic. Again, like we talked about, you'll find that his statements kind of go off topic a bit. So if you look at the last part, now he starts to talk about music. He says, إن المستمع إلى الغناء والملاهي فإن ذلك كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام الغناء ينبت النفاق في القلب. He said, listening to music and musical instruments. For verily it's like the message of Allah ﷺ that he said, ghina or music, that it plants its hypocrisy within the heart to the end of the narration. But we know that this narration is authentic upon Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, which mawquf. It's sahih, mawqufan. It's authentic as it being a statement upon Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. But as far as the hadith of this statement, with this love, not authentic. But we do say it's authentic in regards to the statement of it being from who? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. So that's the thing that we wanted to mention in regards to this particular statement of Ibn Khafif, rahimahullah, in this last part. So let's read the last paragraph. We'll just read it, we're not going to explain it. He said, وَالَّذِي نَخْتَارُ قَوْلُ أَئِمَّتِنَا تَرْكُ الْمِرَاءِ فِي الدِّينِ وَالْكَلَامِ فِي الْإِيمَانِ مَخْلُوقٌ أو غير مخلوق ومن زعم أن الرسول واسط يؤدي وأن المراسل إليهم أفضل فهو كافر بالله ومن قال بإسقاط الوسائط عن الجملة فقد كفر. He said, what we now choose is the statement of our true scholars. He's talking again about who we mentioned, of the ulama sunnah. Leaving off argumentation in the religion. We'll have to explain this again. We'll explain this in a little bit more next week, inshallah. And affairs pertaining to Iman, arguing about affairs of Iman, created or not created. Like I said, we'll explain all that next class. Whoever claims that the message of Allah ﷺ is the wasit yu'addi, he's the mediator or the middleman, that he carries it out, he performs, and that those who he was sent to, of the people, that they're better than him, that he's a disbeliever in the law. And whoever says that we drop the mediators totally in general also has disbelieved. We'll talk about that in general next class, inshallah. Any questions about the lesson, anyone? Hold on. Mm-hmm. The GoFundMe accounts. Everything we just mentioned, same details. The same exact details applies on them, 100%. If you're lying, then the sin will be upon you. And know, like we said, when you beg and you don't need to, you're opening in actuality the door of poverty to yourself, bigger and wider. So keep that in mind. Anytime you beg or you ask and you do this, the door of poverty is going to become bigger and bigger upon yourself. And the affair of being rich, where Allah will enrich you, will become tighter and constricted upon yourself. So the opposite effect happens of what you so-called seek. So keep that in mind. So the GoFundMe's electronically, by the electronic accounts, all applies to the same ahkam and the details that we just mentioned in the book. But if a person is in need, because there's people out there that are truly facing hard times, so we're not going to deny that reality either. There are people out there that are truly under some very hard circumstances. Something happened. Everything we mentioned in the book, everything. Something might have happened. Something of their personal life, something might have transpired. Husband might have abandoned her with all the kids. This has happened in our city. So what's she supposed to do? So you'll go have a GoFundMe, open it up in order to what? Attain some type of help. Or in an instance where her house might have burned down, or his house might have burnt down, or drowned. Something came of a hurricane, destroyed it. A tornado, what? Might destroy it. Billah. All those instances of a person make a GoFundMe, permissible. They could do it. Fadl.
Well, what about someone who they have wealth and they have a job, but they're facing immediate danger, like they're about to get evicted, or they're
How can they get evicted and they got money?
well they have a job, like they're probably going to get paid next week, but it's not before they're about to get evicted. They need that money tonight, or else they're going to get put out tomorrow.
Oh, I see what you're saying. But that's they take a loan. If you're taking a loan for that strenuous situation, then you give the money back immediately. Then that opens up the door of another affair, loans. So we go from faqr, we go from poverty, then we go down to the affair of what? Istiqrad. Istaqrid. You seek a qard madi, seeking a financial loan. Now that opens that door up. In that instance, in that particular instance, if you really need it in that instance, and you're going to give the money back, and you know you're going to give the money back, you truly know you're going to get. I have to say that because I'm sad to say I've seen me. I have personal experiences with some of the people from our brothers and sisters. I have my own personal experiences, and I know a lot of people who, as they say, been burnt out of their money from Muslims. As they say, I've been burnt out of money. I know a lot of people have been burnt out of money and they have burnt them out of their money. And then you'll come to them and ask them, I need my money. What's going on? And they'll walk around acting like you did something wrong. Playing a mental game. I don't know what you're talking about. What are you asking me for? Crazy. You understand? So in those instances, a person needs it. Take it. It's a loan. You have to give it what? Give it back. Keep in mind, everyone, those hadith about owing people money, been punished in the grave is severe. I think sometimes we need to go back to those hadith and read them. How a person can be punished in the grave severely by not giving money back to the people who they owe. Especially in how the Prophet ﷺ abandoned the prayer of a person who had debts. He didn't even pray over him. He said, pray over your companion. To let you know that those type of sins are not something small. They're heavy. Keep that in mind. We're not people that take advantage of people, to take the advantage of the good heart, soft, nice kindness and gentleness of the Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would defend them. To say, I'm taking advantage of the Muslim, yeah, he's a nice one, I'm going to take advantage of you. No, Allah will defend you, especially people who are genuine. And if you don't get it in the dunya, you'll get it in the hereafter. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to fulfill our debts. But there's nothing wrong with that instance to fulfill it. Taking the debt and then paying it back. No, follow.
After the prayer, so my folks want me to ask you, is there such thing as a halal mortgage?
No. I think you already kind of answered it already. All right. We're going to leave that on for later, inshallah. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك